what they did is they basically added a whole functional area into Dynamics 365 to really handle the other tasks that are usually related to an asset, right? So you buy an extruder, for example, and you need to have some type of maintenance with it. Well, in the past, you just go to the asset and maybe you'd put an asset maintenance entry. Like in BC, I think there's a maintenance entry, right, that you can do.
Yep, we can manage the finance side of it.
Exactly, and it works great, right? I
Yep,
mean,
it
for
does.
what it does, but it really doesn't get us to the point where manufacturers really need, or even if you have a lot of assets that you're maintaining for distribution or production, talking about fixed assets internally, computers, extruders, machines, whatever it is, but also the concept of rolling stock too, right? Or moving assets, which would be trucks, trailers, all those different types of assets that you may want different classifications. Yeah, not as much fleet management, but rolling stock fleet management is what they've been used as well. Sadly, in ours, Marcus, when we say fleet management and supply chain management, they're talking about like rental of cars and things of that nature. So
yeah, not internal.
Yeah, exactly. But same concept though. That's the semantics of it. So, and of course, Adam's like, well, how can I use this?
I'm just ready. I'm just getting ready for my time to bust in with something about field service or tracking assets and IoT. I am ready.
Well, let's talk about that.
I'm a really good listener too, so I think we'll have our bases covered. We talked before jumping on about I'm just gotta be the hype man today. That's what the dynamic is gonna be, and that's fine. That's fine.
Hype man's better than the fall man.
Did we do bots last time, or what did we do last time?
We did.
Yeah, I had a whole hour to geek out on Power Virtual Agents, so I am satiated from a confab perspective. We'll be good.
And what's interesting here, though, is that we're actually now looking at the last couple of confabs. Really, we've been talking about the architecture and the technologies involved, right? But this one, we're actually looking at functionality, which is a little bit rarer because sadly it is specific to one product, right? But longer term, we're going to talk about this too. I think that there's some opportunities that Microsoft and the Dynamics team are thinking of that are really making it easier then to potentially have this functionality without then, for example, having a full supply chain management license. Because we've seen AX 2012 R3 turn into AX 7. We've seen it become, finance and operations. We've seen it split now to two products, finance and supply chain management.
Are you saying that Microsoft changes the vernacular every now and then?
They never do. Never.
That is
product names either.
or when they I've got to take one shot at this. When they first introduced Dynamics 365, right? Business Central was Finance Business Edition, and then there was Finance Enterprise Edition, and everyone's like, well, how do I upgrade between them? And it's like, guys, it's really two separate products here that we're talking about. So I'm glad they fixed that. Exactly. That was, it wasn't that long. So I guess today what I wanted to do is just give you guys an introduction to this on stream here. And if you have questions as we're going through it, please in chat make sure to let us know, because we'd love to be able to cover those topics for this. But really what we're going to be doing are a couple of things. First, obviously, the asset management. I've got it pulled up here so that you can see this. If you want to find more details on it, the best place to start is going to be in the release plans that they issue, or Microsoft issues. You can see the link up here. Pause it if you need to get to that information. But the point here is that the asset management capability was introduced, and they're continuing to add to it as well. And the big thing...
Just one plug on the documentation. Yeah. I think Microsoft has actually done a really good job with
this is a home run. Absolutely.
Yeah. So same thing in BC. Very well done. All online, easy to search, find, exceptional.
Yeah, the features. Like, you look at all of our other competitors, they're so secret on what they're actually adding to their products, and they don't have like a lot of these release plans that are very public. And obviously, the reason that probably Microsoft hasn't done it in the future is it is a competitive insight, because we're releasing these release plans months ahead of time, ahead of that actual release. But if you think about it, it's like a bulldozer. I mean, once you've got that process moving, 3 months is not a lot of time to finish up the functionality, right? It's basically finished 3 months ago. They're just doing the final portions of it. But the roadmap, they don't show obviously the entire roadmap, but these major features are getting a lot of that visibility, which is really, really nice. That's so great to know. It is so helpful for customers and sales. Yeah, absolutely, Britt. You're 100%. Like, I'd rather be an open book about what we're doing and be a leader with it as opposed to being really secretive with it. So, like I
Well,
said,
you can actually, now I don't know
yeah,
about the F&O side, but on the BC side, if you go to that roadmap page, you can actually submit new features and then vote on new feature enhancements as well.
yeah, yep, absolutely. Same
And
thing.
I
The
should I
ideas.
should give a plug here for the CE side of the fence. I know this is off topic, but on that community front,
Yeah.
Microsoft has been listening to the channel. Like, I mean, taking cues and suggestions that we've been asking of Microsoft and of the product for years. This is rolling in the past few years in terms of user experience within all the customer engagement apps. And obviously, this also applies to finance, supply chain, BC. Microsoft is doing a pretty bang up job of keeping the ear to the ground and actually starting to prioritize community asks when there's a lot of momentum behind them. So it's awesome to see.
Yep, we're seeing that on BC too.
Yep.
And Britt's getting excited with all the features that she's seeing in there. That's awesome. Love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, let's go through and just talk a little bit about, content-wise. There is a YouTube video that's out there that I'm going to butcher this name and I apologize. Sakin Gandhi went through. He's one of the senior solution architects at Microsoft that really focused on the asset management capabilities. And I really liked his style. He had a couple of framing slides that I wanted to review with you guys. It was on a tech talk, but if you type in Dynamics 365 asset management and look for this particular topic, you should be able to watch that video. The nice thing about it is that it really doesn't have a lot of slides, which I really love. There's a lot of presentations that are PowerPoint centric. He jumps right into the software to cover some of the more advanced capabilities too. So I would recommend after this to go watch that if you want to understand a little bit more in terms of some of the extended setup and functions. We obviously don't have enough time today to go through everything, but it's a good balance to have with it. And then as usual, Marcus, me, Adam, we're always happy to talk to you. If you have a question, just reach out to us. We'll hop on the line and then give you guys some knowledge in terms of what the capabilities here are. But the key thing here, obviously, is kind of the agenda of what we want to go through and tackle here. Thank you for the link. Appreciate it. What is that? That's going to be the supply chain management, asset management updates for February, it looks like. Right? So that's pretty cool too. So, but what we want to do, and that's one thing to note, we'll talk a little bit about that. They're adding features at a pretty rapid pace with this too. So we're talking about like production downtime requirements that we have, and we'll talk through those scenarios, but obviously really important to understand and know. But really, what is asset management? Let's just frame this just a little bit. It contains a video as well. Okay, thank you. Perfect. So what we can do with our agenda here today is obviously go through our asset management and just understand what it is. Really start looking at the corrective and reactive maintenance to start, preventative maintenance, and then go through some work order management scenarios to really talk about the functional locations and all these different setups now that have been introduced as part of the asset management capability. But the first really is to really understand what is asset management and how is it different than field service, right? Because it's so close in so many concepts, but it's a little bit different in terms of what you're doing with the output of this particular process. So you're going to hear it. It's called asset management now. Dynaway used to call it enterprise asset management. Really what it is it's allowing you to do the management and maintenance of your assets that you have in your organization. So the examples they like to give are fixed assets, buildings and plants and machinery and all those types of items that are fixed, right? That's why we call them fixed. And then moving assets as well. Rolling stock is another scenario that we've heard that's classified as this as well. But obviously having different classes or segregation between those to be able to report off of it and see and have that visibility to it. Obviously, a moving asset may also be a fixed asset as well in terms of technical terminology when we go through this. I know, Marcus, we talked ahead of time about this.
Yeah.
It's
Certainly
interesting.
from a finance perspective, it is.
Exactly, because I mean, it's really the depreciation methods that you apply to the asset, and then from there, you're going to be tracking that. But obviously, as well, understanding rolling stock versus what is actually inside of your facility is critical too, right? You need to understand that this is a truck or a ship because that ship may need some coordination to be at a certain dock before you can actually have a tech go and do some type of repair on it. So just something to note is that there's segregation for those types of business processes. And really what we're looking at doing here is planning, optimizing, executing, and tracking the maintenance requirements that we have on these types of assets. So Adam, just as an example, like you're doing with field service, very similar in concept, right? But the output is not really a fixed asset that you're working on. It might be like a customer asset that you're doing a repair with, right? Or a service with it.
Yeah, no doubt. It's usually geared toward, tracking and maintenance for customer assets. That doesn't mean we can't, you think about all of the devices that we might be able to tap into or track with connected field service or Azure IoT, for a production line internally. So we can have things living on both sides of the fence. But, where I start to geek out is the connected part on these, on these assets and on these devices that are out there, whether that's customer or internal.
Exactly. And I know there's going to be a lot of conversation regarding like when we start looking at like the asset management models down here. And this is a slide very similar. There's a Power BI slide that we showed on a Confab as well that shows like, how you move from static reports to dynamic reports to reports with predictions to reports that are fully automated, right, for reaction. There's different levels of automation that you look at as well inside of asset management. And usually a lot of organizations, even today, are at what they classify this, usual current state, right? Where you have a machine that breaks and you react to it, so break fix, right? And then you have the scheduled maintenance, right? The preventative maintenance perspective with it. But going further than this, kind of to Adam's point too, the connected, right? So being able to monitor these particular assets using IoT, being able to do predictions then, depending upon the remaining useful life for the components that are inside of that particular asset. And then lastly, more of that cognitive maintenance. And this is where you start getting into things like, because you've classified the model of this particular asset, and where it's at, where the location is. You could set it up, for example, to after you've had a repair multiple times for the same type of item, that it would generate a secondary work order for inspection for all of the other products that are in that same model, for example. So really getting to the point where the system is identifying different faults based upon what has happened in terms of the inspections and maintenance to then recommend what those next steps are going to be. And so obviously we're not going to get really into a lot of the cognitive, connected, and predictive. We've shown a little bit about that with field service and IoT. But what we want to start with is our useful current state. Like what can you get up and running really quickly, especially if you have F&O or supply chain management, right now. And what they've added is really this functionality right here. And like you said, Adam, words, right? In terms of what product name is going to be next.
I don't care how far we go. If I'm in this career for the next 30 years, that would be incredible. I'm still always probably going to call customer engagement CRM stuff. Like I think most people who have been in the space for some time, it's you can say CRM and people know what you're talking about. You can say FinOps, people know what you're talking about. You can say AX and people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a funny thing, Dynamics. Like I've been now 20 years, Microsoft Business Solutions, then Microsoft Dynamics, right?
Yeah.
Dynamics is stuck, and I do like that name. They should never.
Hey, are
ever
you
change
using
that.
Solomon? Is that
Solomon?
Azapta? Azapta? Are you?
Exapta, exactly. We could go all the way back to that, right? Okay, so let's talk about the functionality that they added. So obviously, within supply chain management, and actually technically it's in the finance functionality, the acquire to retire, right, process is usually what we classify it as, which is generally currently in our process catalogs that we did before this was introduced was really around, fixed assets, right? Creating a fixed asset, setting a depreciation book against it, having multiple depreciation books, running, depreciation, you know,
Light
acquiring
maintenance,
assets, right? Exactly.
total
Light
cost of
maintenance,
ownership.
exactly. To be able to
Yep.
then add a little bit to that, parent-child assets. Those are all the financial perspectives here. So when we start looking at the management of this, though, that's a bit different, right? So that is the manage and maintain, where now we've got where is the asset installed, right? The functional location, for example. What's the structure of the asset? So maybe it's a truck that also has a bed. So when you buy, for example, some of the larger Ford F450s, 350s, some of them come without a bed so that you can add your own type of bed to that particular asset, obviously. And so maybe you want to classify both of those, but you want to then show that that main asset then has a component that's inside of it that's another asset that was purchased that's being depreciated at a separate level as well. And then obviously then the maintenance of this is really important. So when we were talking about the light capabilities that we had before this was introduced last year, we would be able to go to the maintenance register in BC and then enter some maintenance information as well inside of SCM. And that was about it. We didn't record like the work, the time that was against it, the faults that were related to it, the techs that were assigned to it, the downtime that could be there for your manufacturing something because it needs to block the schedule while you're actually doing this maintenance. I mean, none of that functionality existed. It was all manual, and that was really painful, especially in my experience. It's been for like manufacturers or anyone that has a lot of large equipment, so a large distribution center with lots of forklifts, for example. They need to be able to manage this somehow, and it's really painful. And Marcus, I don't know if you've run into that as well, but it's been common on the enterprise side.
Yeah, to a lesser degree with BC clients, but they still have those issues. When you look at a manufacturing facility, yeah, and a piece of equipment goes down, that affects your schedule. Or, do I want to schedule repairs overnight or second shift when a particular machine isn't running? Those sort of scenarios certainly exist.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, I've got since the pandemic was issued, there is a HoloLens that is at our office that I at some point need to adventure out
Hold
to go
on.
get. Uh-huh.
Hold on.
Adam might run over there while we're
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm gonna have to go tonight.
I am like 5 blocks away from the. We have a HoloLens.
Yeah, we have a HoloLens. Yep.
When
Thank you,
did
Chris
that
Garrity.
happen?
I think I was with one of the acquisitions that we did, if I remember correctly.
So look, Adam, you didn't want to talk
Yeah,
about this anyway.
but
You could run to the office.
yeah, exactly.
Back
But
before we're
All
done.
right, just-
yeah, exactly.
I'm
yeah,
gonna
he's gonna
put myself on.
Yeah. A static image that he'll just be sitting there and maybe make his eyes blink. So, but the cool thing about this is that you can actually take this even further and then integrate it with Dynamics 365 guides. And so that's a feature I think in field service, Adam, you have as well, right? Where you can actually have, for example, they've got a maintenance checklist right here, but you can have it where it guides you through the repair of a particular product. And field service is one area because maybe you've got, equipment that you've produced and sold that you're then going to go ahead and repair. But then also from the enterprise asset management, the one video I always love to go back to, sadly it was made by SAP and not by Microsoft, but it's the same concept, is where they actually have a Google Glass that they've actually it was Google Glass and SAP. They put a Google Glass on their face, and then it shows them how to go ahead and refill the distilled water in a battery, which is, pretty critical to be able to do.
The remote assist stuff. I've been wanting to get hands on with that for some time. It's going to be such a game changer for manufacturers where they're leaning on partner networks to install at sites. So you think about solutions we can throw into the mix, not just a core system to understand from intake to design, CPQ, getting to order, getting downstream, shipments, lead times, production line, getting it actually shipped to a specified site. Then you think about, hey, can we equip teams with a Canvas app that is more or less like an installer hub with some tools and resources, taking it to a mixed reality that completely just awesome, the MR level, actually being able to see at a site. And I don't know if you guys have seen in the past few days or in the past few weeks, I guess, in Power Apps, we can actually take and look and gauge how far away it actually tracks ground level distances and through air distances and things like that. So you throw a lens on and you have guides, you have remote assist, you have somebody there, or some collateral to lean on to take a look at to install the product that was requested weeks ago. It's the end-to-end, especially capping off with like a mixed reality installation. Just that's so cool.
Oh, once they figure out mixed reality, I mean that is going to be a huge time savings. Right now, it doesn't have the good field of view, is what they call, right? And then also it's bulky, right? It's still they're getting there with it.
It's like Tron. It's
exactly.
You've got the whole apparatus floating there.
Exactly. And like I said, I think we look at the next 5 to 10 years with this. I see that being extremely beneficial, especially as the cost of those devices comes down too, because they're really, the HoloLens 2 kind of came out, but that's been really slow to be released as well, right? So it's just exciting to see what those capabilities are, but it's even more exciting to know that there are business opportunities for you to use this technology and not to be bleeding edge with it, because I love new technology, but at the same point, when it comes back to a demonstration, I can understand from the end user perspective that bleeding edge doesn't mean that it's a benefit for my organization because of the issues that could be there because they haven't been thought through in a lot of detail. Whereas what we want to do is we want to be leaders in what we're doing and take those bleeding edge concepts and then bring customers along with that as we do that process. So it's really kind of critical. All right, so let's jump into a demo. I think I had 2 other things that were on here. This is the asset management overview, and I had that in the slide. And then this obviously is going to be the asset management information. Let's go ahead and jump into my environment. Can you guys see my screen just to make sure too? Because
we're good.
You will be having to follow along. So we're going to try this new format. Tim, if you're online, thank you for the feedback. We tried this on the last Confab. We have a little bit of an overlay here, so I'm going to see if I can demonstrate with it in the screen so that you can see our happy faces as we're talking through this. But at the same point, then see the content, right? Because when we're over here on the far left, you couldn't see anything. So first thing what we want to do is we really want to go and just understand what is the area that I go into really to get to the asset management functionality inside of supply chain management, which will be updated here at some point, hopefully. But you can see here modules. I'm going to go through the module axis with it. We're going to look at some of the workspaces too. But the point here is that we're going to go into asset management. So this is not a fixed asset. So these are fixed assets down here. Asset management is where we start looking at that life cycle in terms of the maintain and then also the maintenance, the actual execution of work orders against that. And so that's where we're going to be looking at. Yep.
Do those 2 things talk to each other, fixed assets and asset management?
They do. They do. And Tim is online. Thank you, Tim. So they do. So when we go through and look at the asset, the functional asset, we'll take a look at that and get into a little bit more detail with that. Excuse me, the asset itself. So a couple things just to note then here. So common-wise, I usually go through just a high level of what functionality does, right, when we're going through and doing this. Obviously, assets are going to be the assets that we have that is either the fixed asset or the moving assets, right, that we have set up, and we're going to take a look at that. We have functional locations to state where is this particular product at. We have requests of maintenance that can be made as well, so that maintenance managers can be informed then of maintenance that needs to be done in the environment. We have work orders that we can generate as well then off of those maintenance requests then to do certain activities and actions against it. We have work order pools to do grouping of work orders, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the alignment of resource. The scheduling is really slick, and we'll talk about that too. But the pooling obviously allows the grouping then of those particular work orders. Our downtime activities, for machines that are actually involved in manufacturing, for example, and our procurement too, right? Being able to actually purchase parts that are required, or even theoretically producing parts to fix an existing issue with a machine as well. So there's a lot of different options obviously that we have to go through with this. We'll talk a little bit about maintenance schedules, and the asset loans is new and I have not researched that, so maybe on stream we'll take a look at that too.
Oh, Scott, let's go there.
Exactly, right? In a demo, guided, right there.
Hey, we did that with
the-
customer insights. Actually, last time was customer insights. We did that. We did the prove it, and it was one of the coolest aha moments ever. So
Look at that, I proved it. The form opened. Let's go. Okay.
batting 1,000.
There we go. +1 right there, winning. All right, so let's keep on going here. So what I want to do is I want to go through like what would be a typical process, right? So I've got an asset that maybe is already a fixed asset. We can start there, or maybe it's not even related to a fixed asset. So what we want to do is we want to build what are called functional locations, because basically I want to be able to have a reporting hierarchy where I can see exactly where machines are throughout the entire facility, and maybe even in my entire organization. So the example
functional
of that,
location could be physical, it could be a subset of a facility, whatever.
correct. And there's actually different types that you can assign to it. So one thing that you guys are going to note too, my environment, I had to reboot before we started, so it's going to be a little bit slow as it does that wonderful just-in-time compilation. But the point here is that you can have a couple of different what are called functional location types. So if we look at an example of that, I'm going to go to the plant here, and I'm going to create a new and then just delete just to show all the different options we have here. But obviously this is where we can actually then specify location type. So area, plant are kind of the ones we have in our demo environment. It could be parking lot, it could be field theoretically, it could be barn, it could be I'm thinking ag concepts too, but any way that you want to group what location type that particular asset is installed at. So if you are, for example, a concrete manufacturer, you may want to have certain parts that you own as assets, and you want to classify those as they're an asset that's in the functional location of a parking lot, for example, because we made that parking lot. And you can also then define different maintenance plans and different asset types that can be included in those particular functional location types, so that way you can restrict then what gets basically assigned to that functional location, and then also set up different maintenance that can then apply towards any of those particular assets that are in that particular functional location type. So a really powerful capability. But kind of the example I want to go through, we're going to create a new one. Our functional location, we're going to call this SSI, and we're going to call it Stoneridge software as an example. And we're not going to define a parent, and we're just going to define this as an area right now. And so, like I said, it doesn't matter. We're not really going into a lot of the detail of the defaults with it. But what I can do beyond this then, so that's SSI, so that's all of Stoneridge software to start here. Let's create a new one. Let's call this SSI MN. This is SSI Minnesota, right? This is what we could do. And I can say this is another area as well, and click OK to that. And then I could also do another one. We'll just do one more, SSI North Dakota, right? North Dakota. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going through and classifying the layout in terms of where are these assets located. So you could do a plant, you could do, like I said, those different asset types that you could set up, or those functional location types that you can set up. But the point is that you can really build a hierarchy related to this. And
is it multi-level?
It is. Yep.
Okay.
So an example of that, let's go take a look at like USMF plastics. When I look at my functional location tree on the far right here, you can see that there's just a lot of data here that I can start drilling down into. So I'm looking at USMF plastics. I'm now looking at the raw materials related to it. And I don't know if you guys on stream are hearing that sound, but that song is now demoted. We are moving on. It's just got like static in my ears. So in here then, extrusion lines. go to our extrusion lines. Here's extrusion line 1, 2, and 3, right? Type of a thing. You can define a nice functional hierarchy view with it. And what you can do as well is that you can actually go ahead and then view that as well. There's an asset view that we're going to take a look at in a little bit here. After we start assigning some assets then to these functional locations, that allow us then to see in this functional location, here are the assets that are related to it. So we can define that structure then for it. So that's really the first step here, is to go through and then define what is your functional location tree. And we can see with Stoneridge software right here, if I click on this and expand it, we've got Minnesota, and then I put North Dakota underneath too to show just a multi-level with it. And let's say that was a mistake. Obviously, come in here, go ahead and edit it. Go ahead and change my parent or delete it. You may have to delete this one, obviously, to reassign it. So we'll leave it here for now just to show the multi-level hierarchy. Let's go ahead and then do our next step. So we've set up our functional locations. Let's go ahead and then create an asset with it. So I'm going to set up an asset, and I'm sure many of you that know me are going to just get a little chuckle when I tell you what I'm going to create. I'm going to create a 3D printer, because that's what we're going to be maintaining throughout this process. So let's create a new one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this asset SSI, and I'm going to say, I don't know, Prusa I3 MK3 is what we'll do with it. Asset type, we're going to say it's an extruder, which it isn't, but it is. And then we could assign a manufacturer and a model related to this. So the nice thing about these, obviously, is that if you have reference information regarding that manufacturer and that model, and then the bill of materials, for example, that's used inside of that, you can define then, obviously, that by referencing then that manufacturer and model information that's related to it. When you're creating an asset as well, you can also relate this then as a child asset to a parent. And when we're creating this asset right now, we're not creating a fixed asset at this point in time. This is like we said, asset management. It's an asset management asset. It's actually different than that fixed asset, but we can link the fixed asset then to almost what I'd classify as a functional asset. Like I don't know, we're gonna have to figure out a way to not segregate them, because they don't need to be segregated. They are different purposes for what we're doing with this. But obviously, where do I go to get to the asset information? Well, you could theoretically create assets here that are not a fixed asset. So you could have some machine that you have capitalized and that you actually have gone through the full depreciation, and you still have in place, but you still need to do maintenance against it. So you're not doing any depreciation against it. It's not affecting that value, but maybe it's being expensed on a project, for example. So that's why they're segregated for that. We've got a default that happened here as well for the functional location. I'm going to leave it at default. The nice thing about that is you can have people creating assets, have it assigned to a default functional location. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and assign that asset. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK to generate that asset. And we should see our wonderful asset screen come up. But here's some additional information, right? So the manufacturer, the model year, the serial number that's related to it, the fixed asset. Here we go, right? Here is the fixed asset, either a person or potentially as well a fixed asset resource that we have that we can relate to as well inside of here. So this then links this asset to a fixed asset then inside of our system for reference. And then obviously we can have like vendor information. We'll talk a little bit more about the maintenance plans and things of that nature in a little bit, but the point here is that you can keep it as simple as this. I just created the asset. I don't have a serial number related to this one, and I can just go ahead and save it and then close it away. And at this point now, I have an asset that is something that I can then basically assign then to a location. So let's go to our Minnesota location. Let's go back into our functional area and go to our functional locations, and let's go ahead and select, I think it was SSI, right, is what we were looking at. So MN, and we're going to install an asset at that location. So we're giving some feedback to the system saying, yep, you know what, I took that wonderful 3D printer that we had, which should be something SSI if I remember correctly, right? There it is. We're going to select that and we're going to install it. And the nice thing about this is that it's keeping track then of this history of these movements of assets as well that are occurring. There are, an example is there's a cart manufacturer for airports that I worked with very heavily with back in the day. And one of the requirements that they had is that they needed to be able to track when they move their cart systems from one state to another because of tax responsibilities or tax requirements that are there for it. So having that movement of that fixed asset history or that asset history in this situation obviously is really critical maybe for other business processes that you have. So at least being able to track that is a really good thing here, right? So I can go ahead and do that, and great, now I've got that asset assigned, and you can see here that the assets is being updated to represent then the quantity that I have here for that. So that's kind of the basics to start. Obviously, there's a finance and accounting perspective that we're not talking about of that asset and depreciation that would be set up, the acquisition, all those types of things. Not worry about that for the time being. Just know it integrates and it depreciates with it as well.
Hey,
Yep.
Scott.
Yeah.
So a little in the reads, I apologize, but being the CRM +1 here, for any
We love our
you
plus
know,
ones, by the way, too.
admins or thinking about like data structure.
Yeah.
So is that a true one-to-many from the functional location to this asset that you just tacked onto it, or is that actually working through an intermediary like an intersect table or a handshake?
So it's an intermediary table. So the asset count here that's being assigned, if you actually click on your assets here as well, you can see then all of the assets that have been related to it. And you can see it's an asset object table. Basically, we're taking the asset and then we're assigning to it the type, the functional location, and that type of stuff. So it is many assets to one functional location type of a thing, but it also then allows you to kind of navigate through the hierarchy, because if you're at a higher level, those assets, maybe for reporting, you want to include then maintenance requests for that entire group, right? That entire functional location as well.
So that was going to be my follow-up. Is it if we've got that visibility, if we've got a slightly more complex hierarchy, we can still see assets at every level, and in that hierarchical roll-up, being able to see the 5-10,000 foot view of assets per location.
Correct. And then the other thing with this, though, too, is that there may be some reporting that you want to add to have some more complex visibility to it. But because we have the ability to have children that are related to the functional locations, and we can assign multiple assets at different levels of that functional location hierarchy, maybe you want reporting kind of like Excel, right? Where if you do a pivot table, it repeats the same one over and over. And then the second one is going to be that functional location. And then the asset, obviously, might be different than inside of that functional location. So those are options then that you can do for reporting to get deeper if you wanted to. Kind of out of the box, Adam, just to kind of highlight it, because that's a really good question. Like if we go to our asset view now and take a look at this, see how we can see Stoneridge software, right? Click drill down. Stoneridge software Minnesota. Click drill down. Okay, we've got an asset in this location, and then we have another location that's inside of here as well. So when we look at this hierarchy that's related to it, it's keeping track directly of that asset being in this SSI Minnesota functional location, but technically SSI Minnesota is still part of SSI as well, right? So apologize if you already covered this. Is assets part of finance, operations, or a separate add-on? Dave, we did cover it at a very high level, but we will repeat it, which is great. This is part of supply chain management. So when we start looking at the asset management, it's part of the SCM license. And there's one other thing as well with this. It's different in the licensing model that they did with this a little bit as well. More specifically, when you purchase supply chain management, you have the ability to use the asset management functionality up to 100 assets, last I recall. After 100 assets, you have to buy packs of 5,000 assets to be able to then have more assets inside of the system. Not fixed assets, these enterprise asset management type assets that are inside of here. So, yeah, it's $100 per pack then of 5,000, I think, per month.
Are you saying
Yep.
that Microsoft licensing can be a little complex?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. But that's the big thing here, right? So, and then just to kind of
That's different than fixed assets, though, right?
It is.
From a
Absolutely.
finance perspective.
Exactly, because you buy finance, you don't have any restrictions on how many fixed assets that you can create. But in here, you do. If you exceed 100, then you have to do that 5,000 pack, and I think you can order up to 50 of those 5,000 packs, and then after that it's unlimited. So they give up billing you after that X amount. So this is the usage-based economy we're in, right? That's what's shifted with this.
But and back to the ask, like I appreciate that, whether we're talking supply chain, finance, field service, sales, whatever, Microsoft is paying attention to accessibility, like ease of access. For if I want to see a hierarchy of my assets per location, check it out. We've got that unlocked right here. You want to see a hierarchy of accounts. If you've got enterprise level sites, actually setting up those parents on the CE side, it's super easy to do. So, the mundane, the configuration, actually setting the stuff up, that's one thing. But for the end user, when everything is actually built and set and related the proper way, it's easy enough to jump in and see this and consume it. And then, this can be a report in and of itself, but, take that to better, higher levels.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Okay, so now that we have the asset set up, we have the functional location set up with it, we're now using it, and it's going ahead and it's printing out some pretty amazing things, right? So whatever we want it to create, it's creating, and then all of a sudden, there's some type of issue that occurs. My name is Judy Funderbunk, I think is who I'm going to be representing in this role. I'm an employee of Stoneridge Software that is just walking by that manufacturing area, and all I hear is just some crazy clicking. And basically, I know enough to know that it shouldn't be making these crazy clicking sounds, and it doesn't look like it's printing properly anymore. So the nice thing about this solution as well is that if we go, for example, into our finance and operations mobile app capability here, we can see that there is an asset management mobile app that's been added to supply chain management. Now, I want to be very distinctive with this. It is separate from Power Apps. It is not a Power App. It is actually the mobile app capabilities that the AX7 team added. I think it was actually released in like AX 8.0 or the 8.0 release, and we're obviously at the 10.0 release right now. But it allows you basically then to have an app installed from the iOS store, from the Android store. That's not a Power App, that then uses this app capability then to interact with finance and operations. So Adam and I talked a little bit about this, as well as Marcus, for a little bit before. Obviously, this could convert into a Power App in the future. I mean, I could see them getting rid of these mobile apps because they are functional though, but two different technologies for a company to learn, might not be what they want to do.
That, and if you've got very, very unique business scenarios, business cases, use cases, I mean, I guess usually I look at the stocks, the stock apps, the stock capabilities as one thing. And if we can keep things as close to the vest as possible, that's great. But sometimes in some scenarios, we break from that, we deviate from that center line. So, maybe a Power App is the right choice, question mark.
It could be. Like, you could do it, right? I mean, there's with either data integrator or then with the common data service that we've highlighted kind of in the past here as well. There'd be obviously some development effort with it. My personal, once we go through this, you'll see kind of the process with it. I think, personally, I'd wait for Microsoft to do it, in a lot of ways, because, just like Power Apps used to be, the mobile apps actually is what we used to demo much more inside of F&O before we actually moved more towards the Power App capabilities, and as they finished more and more of that. So, it's just eventually they're going to want to unify everything from that perspective as well. So, right. But it's functional, right? So it does provide, this is the talking of the bleeding edge versus leading edge. It still does what we need it to do. And I'll just highlight that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and open my Android phone up, and you can see here is my wonderful Android phone here that we have set up. This is really cool. I like this. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my finance capability. So I'm going to type in my finance and operations app, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. So I pre-installed this, obviously, as we went through the process. I moved Adam over so you guys can hopefully see it on stream now. If you can't see it, please let me know. It looks like it's okay. I'll move it a little bit over here like this. You see it okay, Marcus? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, so like I said, my name is Judy. I'm going to go ahead and come into my asset management area here, and we're going to go ahead and pull it up, and there I am. And you can see I've got some information that I can interact with here from a mobile capability. So I've got my functional locations I can look up. I've got my maintenance assets. I've got my requests. I also could be a tech theoretically working on this particular application then to provide feedback as I'm going through this process. But like we said, we're going to go ahead and do a maintenance request. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my all maintenance requests here. And we can see then a list basically of these maintenance requests that we have that are inside of the system. And so these are all the maintenance requests when we look at the screen as the maintenance supervisor that I would have access to. And basically what I want to do is I want to generate a new one. So in the bottom corner here in the assist edit, you might be able to see my finger touching that. I want to create a new maintenance request for it. So I'm going to click on that particular action. I'm going to say that this is a maintenance type request. This printer is making some crazy, crazy sounds. I think it's just corrective at this point, saying printer, if I can spell, printer sounds horrible. Okay. And then what I can do here is I can look then for that particular asset as well. So I could search for, I think we called it SSI, didn't we, or something like that, to have that asset. So there it is, the SSI Prusa. Go ahead and select that. And you know what? I think this needs a little bit of an urgent care related to it. Let's create that request. And so when I do that and click on done for it, basically what's happening here is that maintenance request then is being generated. And you can see then inside of here, my maintenance request now has been generated. It's maintenance request number 18 that we have. And a couple other things I can do here as well if I wanted to. I could go ahead and do an attachment. So I just clicked on the attachment icon here. I'm going to add an attachment, and I'm going to say example of this, for example. Here is the issue, and then I can choose an image, and then I can choose that particular image, and then I can click done. And then now I've added an attachment to that particular maintenance request as well, right? So this is that app capability then. So you can actually tailor these apps as well to add or remove, for example, different fields that you want on here. You can, make it so that you require certain fields. There's just there's a bunch of setup that you can do then to drive some of the requests for it. So at that point then, I'm Judy, and I'm done at this point, right? Or Julia, excuse me, I'm done, and I'm going to go ahead and then, go do whatever I need to do. But now we have a maintenance request that exists. So kind of the next step here then, let's go ahead and move Adam back so that he is in the right spot. There you go. And let's go into our maintenance request. So this is the nice thing too, is that there are workspaces related to this as well. So you don't have to go through the module access with it. And if we go to our maintenance request management, I can click on this and we can then see, for example, the maintenance requests that have been generated. So here we have that corrective maintenance request that was generated. I could also show it in the list here as well. So if I have the maintenance requests that are here, here's our printer sounds horrible, and I can take a look at this particular request. I can see the attachment that's related to it. So on the top right here, that picture that we took now as well is in here so that we can see and zoom in and be like, yeah, that's right. That absolutely does not look really good. It's not printing anymore for some reason, right? So from here, as the maintenance supervisor now, I've got a couple of different options that I could do with this. One would be that the request is invalid and I can just get rid of it. The other would be that I want to generate a work order then for this particular maintenance request. And maybe it's just one step is to generate the work order, and then the next step is to go ahead and basically schedule it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the work order here. I'm going to say it's a corrective work order that we want to do. For our job type, I want to have a tech go out there and actually inspect it. And if the inspection turns out to have a failure, either I'd create a new work order, or maybe I'm going to add additional lines then to this work order to then do the repair while I'm there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say the inspection portion of it. I'm going to click on OK to that. And what that should do then is that should take this maintenance request and generate then that work order for this particular asset that we need to repair. So, pretty easy, right, in terms of the concept here. We're going to wait for it once again because I rebooted my wonderful box, so it's going to be slow to start. But once this work order gets generated, which is what just happened, we're going to go ahead and just take a quick look, and we can see that it created the work order in the background. So if we go back now, we could go to our maintenance requests, or what we could do is we could go to our work order management, and then also view all the different work orders that we have inside of here. So the printer sounds horrible. There it is, right? So there's our work order. And so from here, there are a couple of different options then that you have. So depending upon the state of it, so there's a lifecycle state that's related to a work order. And you can see these are new that have been set up in here initially. The nice thing about the work orders is that based upon the state that they're in, obviously that's where you're going to be applying then different types of processes. So the example would be, we've got a new work order. So I'm clicking on that work order to take a look at it. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to schedule this particular work to be done by an employee that has availability to do that. And one of the options we have here is that if I go, for example, into my general area here, I can click on this schedule button, and then from here I can actually go through and then have it figure out basically what person to actually go through and then schedule throughout this process. Now, the nice thing about the schedule is that it takes into account skills and certificates that you may be setting up on your workers. So that way, for example, if you need somebody that is certified to work on extruders, well, that would be a skill that would be set up on their employee record. And then from there, when the schedule button is clicked, if it actually aligns then with that skill or capability that that worker has, it'll use that worker to then do the dispatching and to do that processing then of that particular work order as required. And what you can also do is you can have it where multiple people are dispatched. So if you have multiple lines on here and each of those different types of events require different skill sets with it, the system can actually go through and then schedule multiple people at a line by line level to go through then and then do that type of repair or inspection. And you have the ability to override that too. If we go to our header, for example, in here, down here on the schedule, I can say one maintenance worker only for this particular work order as a setup that can then drive that as well. Other things then to know as well, so that would be schedule if we want the system to do it. Dispatch is a little bit opposite. Dispatch is where we're actually going through and we're assigning a specific worker then to this particular work order. So maybe, maybe there's a person right next to me as I get this maintenance request and I just look at them and I say, hey, you got to go repair that. And so we can just go ahead then and assign that if we wanted to as well to Bill or to any worker that has been set up as an actual EAM worker. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule it just really quickly here. We're going to run it through. I'll go ahead and refresh and see if we actually got a schedule. And I think I did all of my scheduling for today, of course, in the background.
There's a fair amount of crossover here with field service. So, when we think about scheduling concepts in Dynamics 365 field service, the first party app, what Scott was just talking about in terms of, hey, sometimes it takes a crew versus a single resource. Sometimes we need a single resource or multiple resources really just to cover certain certifications or skill sets or require, job requirements. So, when we're thinking about how to schedule from a board or from resource requirements, a lot of this stuff in terms of crews, pools, skill set certifications. I mean, there's a common language here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in here as well, there's other documentation that we have as well. So we can see the status updated to scheduled as part of this work order process. And typically from the management perspective with this, now that it's scheduled, you want to interact with the app to do that, right?
Uh-oh.
Is that better, guys?
We can hear you just fine, I think.
Yeah, somehow I must have bumped something with it. Sorry, guys, I bumped something. Okay, so, okay, much better. Thanks, Carl. So let's go ahead and click on the lifecycle state. So what we can do here, obviously, is we could actually specify if we had different states in terms of what we wanted to update. So if we wanted to set it to in progress or change the actual state with it, we could update that and then reflect that. But what we can also do inside of here is we can actually go into this particular maintenance job in that line, and we can see it's an inspection line that's related to it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that inspection line as an example. We can see that the printer sounds horrible, and then on here I'm going to click on my attachments. Do I have any attachments that are related to it? Yep, that maintenance request attachment that was there is showing up. I can then go ahead and open it up to view it. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly log in here to view this particular image. And so we'll wait for it in my demo account here, and then there we have our image, right? So we can interact them with any attachments that we have as well for this. I'm going to go ahead and go back then to our application, but this is also then where we can record the feedback revolving around what we're doing with this. So let's say we're looking at that and we need to go ahead and make a change to it. We can go in here and say, you know what, I need to post some time with it. I spent an hour on it, so I can add some hours. I'm going to say, for example, that I did some type of work on here as we let it load up in the background. I could select that work and then add that to that category, that specific category that's related to it, add the hours that's related to it, and then post that time against it as well. So I can say this is my maintenance hours. We did an hour for this, and then for my line property here, billable, non-billable. And some of you might be observing that, hey, look at that. It actually looks like it's almost assigning to a project. Well, it does. It actually posts time to projects. If you look down here, you can't see it because Marcus is in the way, but as I bring this up just a little bit, we should be able to see then that particular, what we classify as our project number. If I change the height real quick here, that project number is actually in our line details, and you can see it's actually generating sub-projects that are related to this particular work order to take those costs and to basically put them against an internal project that we have. So really cool in terms of being able to record that information and then update those statuses. I could add a note to it. Finally, on this one, what I can do is I can actually take it, and then what I could actually do is just go ahead and then close it out and then say, you know what, I am done with this. I want to update the actual status related to this, and I want to set it to finished or some other state that you have with it. So there's these lifecycle states are configurable. I think like out of the box, there's like completed, scheduled, in progress, and a couple others that are inside of here. And then once you assign those, then they can actually reflect the update then to the work order as well. So like I said, that's kind of the cool capability, at least in
Hey, Scott. Looks like we are no sound again.
if I'm bumping something.
I hear some static, but
yeah,
We're back.
I think what's happening is when I'm clicking into Streamlabs and I'm doing the Control Z, it's actually muting it is basically what's happening, because that's what happened last time. Thank you guys. Okay, but point is here though is that we can actually then track obviously that downtime as part of that process. And this then is reflected then in the resource calendar, and in that resource calendar that is used then when we're doing MRP processing. So it knows that that is integrated with that, right? So, that really high level is kind of how the process works. The only other automation then that's really involved with this, obviously there's items that you can consume with it. There's projects that are then keeping this cost in that bucket all related to it. But if you wanted to, for example, on our common, if we wanted to create, for example, a maintenance schedule, we could create a maintenance schedule and then assign those particular assets then to that maintenance schedule, and then specify how often should that occur. Should it occur weekly? Should it occur monthly? Should it occur yearly? There's all these different types of maintenance job type variants that we can set up that are related to it, and then also define what those requirements are as well. So really,
Could they be usage based versus time based?
so I know that it is the predictive portion of it allows for it to understand the usage that, what do you call it, the useful life that's left on it, that can then be used to do calculations for these maintenance schedules. So it can obviously, like flow would be another one. Like a filter's had certain number of gallons per minute that have been applied to it, or per day, or per lifetime. And obviously at that point, at a certain threshold, you want it to create that work order. Threshold based would be what you would set up then to be able to drive that.
Okay.
Yep. So, like I said, just that base concept, though, from the asset to seeing the mobility related to it, to basically going ahead and then generating those work orders, tracking those hours, tracking those items, aligning the right resources, having the system schedule for you. That's all functionality that's pretty new inside of here. So, I know we're getting close on time. Marcus, Adam, did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add to that?
I don't.
I just want assets. I didn't do the hype man thing at all. Like you were batting 1,000 on prove it aha moments as we're going through demos and functionality, and here I am just whiffing on all fronts. So sorry for that.
Yeah, no worries. It works out great, right? And I have to do a big shout out. I can hear background music, but not you talking. Oh, thanks, Sabrina. Yep. So it should be better now, hopefully. I'm looking at my audio. So I want to do a shout out, though, to Sabrina as well. Thank you, Sabrina, for IMing me. This is awesome. We love it. So one of the big things here, obviously, is going to be, kind of the next events that we have. So Thursday, July 2nd, we are going to have Power Automate Power Hour.
Power Hour.
So we've got a lot. Absolutely. We've got a lot of different automation scripts that each of us has created, and we're going to be showing, some of those capabilities.
Each of us will create.
I already created mine.
I know you
got mine too.
You got your toolbox. I didn't do the reading for today, so there's a theme. No, I have some Power Virtual Agents and some other things, some flows that I can lean on that have already been baked into a few solutions here and there. So we will be just fine.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. Just to show. I mean, we can automate almost anything now. And when I see an RFP saying, "Can you send a notification when this happens?" It's like, yep. Right. So, but we want to show what does that mean, right? And then I think on Thursday, July 16th, that's 4 weeks from now, that we're looking at our business intelligence power hour. So this is taking Power BI reports and using that full Power platform then to do reporting inside of there. So, multiple data sources representing content, for example, in CE or sales inside of supply chain management or vice versa. I mean, just a lot of cool capabilities that we're going to dive into there as part of that as well.
This is our cameo, our geeky cameo of the week, or of the bye week, whatever we want to call it. This is Valkyrie. If you didn't catch my background here, this is
Tor.
Oh, come on, it's not showing up. But I have Valkyrie with me, and she's one of my favorite characters. From one of my favorite movies in the MCU, and wanted to shout her out today.
That's awesome. And then I also had, we were looking at that image, right? So 3D printers. My daughter wanted a night light. So this is what we made her. You can not see it because it's green right now. Let's go ahead and change the color. This is a lithopane. So basically a light behind here. This was actually printed on a 3D printer, and this light will be a night light. And then from there, she will have a little light in her room that will be
that's
right
so
next to her.
cool.
Yeah, it's
That's
She-Ra.
so cool.
She-Ra.
Yeah.
She-Ra. It's like I remember watching He-Man and She-Ra when I was a kid. So when she was like, "Yeah, I
Masters of
really
the
want
Universe.
She-Ra," exactly.
That's
Pretty
so cool.
Yeah, it is. So we're excited. So that was that picture that we were looking at. So 3D printers are practical in some ways.
Sounds
So
like
anyway,
we should do a 3D printer session here.
oh my gosh, Marcus, don't even get me started.
Don't.
Like I
what
could do
have
a
you done?
10-hour stream on that,
Do
right?
we need to
So,
do we need to do a confab on, are
Yeah.
we volunteering to do a confab
Yeah.
on some sort of like flow-based integration with 3D printers or IoT or something?
Yeah, I used to do. Well, I did at the BC events. I would always have the 3D printing content that I'd go through because it's a eventually when it gets there, it's going to be a pretty big change in how you provide products, right? Because you're stocking plastic and you're producing parts off of it, and you just have time. So, but yeah, it'll be fun. So, but anyways, thank you guys for coming, hanging out with us, providing feedback. Obviously, 2 weeks from now we'll be back with that Power Automate Power Hour. Tell your friends, tell everyone. We'd like to have that to be a really fun one because we'll try to be as interactive and online as possible with it, and maybe even create some flows as we're going through it to tackle some random business problem that you may have.
Scott will take comments and create flows for us as we're working through it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun then, right? So bring your questions with, but we'll then reconvene right before the 4th. I know it's right before, obviously, the 4th of July, but I think it'll be a fun topic to cover. So that's it. That's all I have, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you.